All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting of the Silver Falls School Board to order. Tim Roth is out sick tonight, so I'll be running the meeting this evening. Please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time I take a motion for the consent agenda.
I move for approval. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, I'd like to invite our student reps to come up, Kayleen and William.
Hello.
Hello.
Well,
Okay, starting off with clubs. FBLA. FBLA had a week with lots of fun, such as adding new members to the club, plus had a picture day and cookies retreat, Valentine's for Veterans in Portland. State will be April 4th and 6th in Portland and is entering 7 students in a chapter event. Red Cross. Red Cross Club has 30 students that are involved. Ms. Fisher and Ms. Sheets and Barnes are the ones that started it up in December. March 2nd went to a state Red Cross conference and took 14 students. ASB. Queen of Hearts was a blast. Princess and Prince was Charlotte Jones and George Zanchenko. Queen and King were Olivia Dahl and Joe Biden. Playoffs was a great excitement for Silverton High. Got the chance to hold a playoff basketball game, and we had balloons everywhere, face paint, and take a picture with the Fox. NHS, National Honor Society, is helping Eugene Field reading Under the Star, Rubber Slippers, and Dessert in April 11th, and will be presenting 2012 Beyond Awards. Thespians Drama Club. The Frog Prince was very fun and successful. Winter show performances and black box auditions Wednesday through Friday, March 13th through 15th. Interact Club. 40 members have been joined in this club. Meetings are every Thursday mornings, and they just recently went to a senior home and handed out Valentines. Also, they do things such as landscaping right now, and they are working on a project at Scotts Mills. Key Club. New officers are elected and doing 2 services projects each month. This month, making cards for classified employees, also blankets for the Children's Hospital. Speech and debate. Preparing for district and state competitions, there's 25 students involved in this club. Finished regular season and preparing for national qualifying finalists, March 21st through 23rd. FFA week was last week, and they had a casino night on February, Right now, they're getting ready for state convention, the 22nd through 24th, and 25 students are attending. Another thing is preparing for CDEs for state. Florida Culture started up last Thursday. GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, isn't all about genders and focus on anti-bullying. 10 members are involved, and Bake Sale was first Friday and helped battered women's shelter. That's for the clubs.
thank you.
All right. Sports. The month of March brings us to the end of the winter sports season and the beginning of the spring season. In girls basketball, the team ended their season in the first round of the state playoffs when they lost to Springfield 23-63 on March 2nd. In addition, 3 players were recognized on the all-league team. Junior Megan Ratliff received second team honors, and junior Lily Paradis and freshman Aaliyah Parsons were nominated as honorable mentions. In boys basketball, on the other hand, the team competed in the state tournament this past week. They would beat Sherwood March 1st, 79-64, and then Milwaukee 55-47 on March 6th, before falling to a very good Jefferson team 58-67 March 8th. In their final game, the Foxes overcame Mountain View 66-54 to earn a 3rd place finish. The boys were also recognized on the all-league team. Coach Darren Shryock received the Coach of the Year award. Senior Zach Gangler received the Player of the Year award. Senior Toby Roth earned the first team position. Senior Trevor Bledsoe was nominated for the second team. And Senior Joe Schaefer and Senior Preston Kirk received honorable mentions. Dance. The dance team is set to compete March 13th at the OSAA State Dance Meet. In wrestling, the boys competed February 23rd at the state wrestling meet. Senior Quinn Dreyer and senior Isaac Tobin placed second. Sophomores Cameron Clokey and Cayman Goen earned 7th place. Boys swimming. Silverton's only state swim meet participant, Joe Reedy, placed 6th in the 100-meter backstroke February 16th at Mount Hood Community College. The spring sports, golf, tennis, baseball, softball, and track, have all been practicing this past weeks in anticipation for the first event these next few days. Tennis is set to begin this Tuesday, March 12th. Track and field's first meet and softball's first game is Wednesday, March 13th. Varsity baseball's first game is Thursday, and golf's first competition is March 20th. That's all for sports. Thank you.
Lots happening. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
It's starting to wind down for the end of the year now, with
Yeah.
spring kicking in.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this time I'd like to go ahead and open it up for audience with visitors. Would anybody like to address the board this evening?
Evening, everybody.
Evening.
Brother Act. Kevin Palmer, but I'm not here to talk about View Creek tonight. I'm here representing Susan Sassano, the program director for our local Silver Falls YMCA organization, and I'm currently the chair of our local leadership council for the YMCA. Susan is out working with kids tonight, was not able to make it in time for the meeting, so asked me to read a letter from her, speaking for the Y and our council as well on behalf of the May ballot measure. So I'll read it word for word.
Okay.
On behalf of the Silver Falls YMCA, Silverton local branch of the Family YMCA of Marion and Polk counties, I'd like to express my support in the Silver Falls School District upgrades to the Schlater Street campus to be included in the May bond ballot. When we talk about the core at the YMCA, we discuss more than the strength of muscles. We talk about our mission, vision, and values that benefit our community and families. This includes maintaining a strong partnership and working relationship with our school district. Since my arrival in 2007 as program director responsible for youth and middle school sports programs, we've utilized the Schlater Street campus facilities for our track and field program extensively. Upgrading McGinnis Stadium will positively impact our youth and middle school track and field programs. The ability to train and compete on a new, well-marked track surface will benefit our younger generation running, hurdling, jumping, and throwing skills. Renovating the spectator seating area, restroom, and concession building will allow more friends and family to Silverton to support their student athletes competing in meets. Installing artificial turf inside the track will minimize field maintenance during the season and preparation in the off-season. As a nonprofit organization, the YMCA relies directly on school district facilities to provide safe and enjoyable youth sports programs. Without this collaboration, we would not be able to offer quality programs that guide our children to a healthier lifestyle and a respectful community member. Middle school track and field teams currently register 60 to 70 student athletes from the Silver Falls School District, including homeschooled and smaller community students. Kindergarten through 5th grade track and field programs register about 55 to 65 future track stars, and additionally a few 5-year-olds wanting to be like their big brothers and sisters. New program this spring is called Y Rookies Track and Field, and that is being offered as an opportunity for 3 and 4-year-olds to enjoy running, throwing, and jumping to their heart's content. Respectfully yours, Susan Sassano, Sports Director, Silver Falls Family YMCA.
Thanks, Kevin.
I'll leave a copy of this with you.
Good evening. I'm Kyle Palmer, and I'm here to make some comments about the inclusion of athletic improvements as well at the Schlater facility to the May bond ballot. This issue interests me due to my history in our area with regard to athletics in the school district, including 8 years on the Silverton City Council working to augment the agreement between the district and the city to jointly provide parks and athletic space to area residents. 9 years on the Budget Committee advocating for use of the city resources to aid in that agreement. 8 years on the Silver Falls Family YMCA Leadership Council advocating for adult and children activities. 5 years as the chairman of your bond advisory committee, which included also advocating for the inclusion of athletic facilities to the Pine facility. 5 years coaching at Monitor, 2 years at Silverton High School, and 15 years with Silverton Little League and Silverton JBO. So that's why this interests me so much. The last 3 city surveys convey some understanding into this area's priorities for city expenditures, at least, where athletic facilities go. I know that's a different district than yours. But in 2010, when given $100 to spend on community services, respondents said they would spend $14.37 on parks and athletic space. That was the 3rd highest response, right after streets/sidewalks and police. A 48-cent increase from the same question in 2007. So this was given during the economy that we're living in still. They also were asked to support a bond measure to develop a new park in the Ike Mooney area, and 65.8% gave a qualified yes. Again, bear in mind they had already passed the high school bond and the economy was in transition already at the time. In 2007, they also, when given $1,000 to spend on community services, said they would rank parks and athletic space 3rd highest again after streets/sidewalks and police, and asked specifically if they favored the current relationship between the city and the school district to have the Silver Falls School District provide recreational play field facilities. 89.1% of them said that they liked the agreement that was in place now rather than having a Parks and Rec district or having some different answer. Back in 2004, people were asked what facilities Silverton needs most. 51.4 said additional parks. Of those respondents, 57 listed new playfields as their priority, which was the highest rated answer. When asked how to spend $100 on Parks and Rec, the highest response was maintenance, followed by new sports fields and facilities. So there's a driving force in our community over the last 7 years at least to expand whenever possible the ability for kids to get out on these fields. Completing improvements to the football field, lighting and track should be included in this bond. Improvements to the football field specifically will expand non-high school use exponentially, will significantly reduce the use of city water at Schlater Street, will reduce the use of chemical fertilizers, and will all but eliminate maintenance expenses related to the football field, which I'm assuming, I heard somebody say a number a few weeks ago, but I'm guessing that's between $30,000 and $50,000 a year once you get everything factored into that. The logic of spending that kind of money to maintain a facility that's used for a dozen or so games a year pales with consideration of the efficiencies that would be gained by these improvements that you're considering. Not to mention relieving some maintenance costs due to extra wear and tear at Pine Street, as I think it's being a little bit overused right now. It's important to note that these improvements are not just for high school use or even primarily so. They would be the only component of this bond with the potential to impact students and families across the district. They would also impact visitors and the economy in our area. And while it can't be proven, I would submit in conclusion that the only bond to pass in this district dating back to the original Pine Street Phase 1 was one that included improvements to athletic facilities that would serve the entire area, supporting the conclusions drawn before from our community surveys. Any questions?
No, thanks, Kyle.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you. Thanks. Anybody else like to address the board this evening? Yeah. Please sign in.
I'm sorry?
Please go ahead and sign in. And
My name is Jason Alexander, and I want to say that I agree with the Palmer brothers, and hopefully that you guys will look at this in May. And I just want to add something to that is through my profession, I work for the city of Woodburn as a police officer over the last 18 years. I see far too often that kids are left without enough avenues and sometimes turn to other areas to fulfill that need. And if we increase or give them the best ability to have a positive outlook as they're growing up and going through school, I think that's most beneficial. So I just want to say that adding this, the track, the AstroTurf, all that would be most beneficial to all kids, not just to the high school. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Right, anybody else? Yes.
My name is Joe Fleischman. Live in Scotts Mills. We have a son attending first grade at Scotts Mills School. We spoke to the board, for the record, we spoke to the board during their last work session in regards to our concerns with the declining open enrollment, with the declining enrollment and the district's enforcement of its open enrollment policy. I wanted to thank the board for their time and their open discussion in regards to our concerns. I was wondering if you had a timeline.
We don't yet. We're still in discussions. Andy, I don't know if you want to add anything, but we will be discussing this probably over the next couple of months, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's one of already 2 topics slated for your March work session. Yeah, I think it's up to your conversation to determine your timeline, but it does make sense if we can implement something, at least in a transitional fashion for next year.
The administrative team is working on some options for us to look at, and we'll be discussing them over the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Gene?
Thank you for allowing us time to speak, and I'm here to talk about the bond issue. Of course, you've had me speak in front of you previously, and contrary to the Palmers, I'm here to say don't spend money, don't have a bond. And I'll make a little comment. I've been down at the track practicing for the Senior Olympics in the 100 meters, and I think the track looks great. There's some patches in it. I even tested the patches, and they work fine too. So anyway, for what that's worth. My concern is that we're moving forward on doing a bond election based on assumptions that people don't have any hesitation, in my opinion, to spend money for us. They have a conflict of interest. And we've had presentations about concerns about doing it in a different manner. The board, and specifically Andy, has had a closed gate policy regarding that. You haven't allowed me to go into the building. You haven't allowed us to make a presentation so you can see that there's an alternative method of fixing the building, and I'll mention it here just presently. It's called we're going to do a portal frame. You're familiar with a portal frame. Portal frame is just like you see in a lot of new buildings, even where they do some X-framing or something that's heavy steel construction normally. Sometimes it's glulam beams. In this particular case, it'd probably be steel. And from the portal frames, you do drag struts that go and tie into the assemblies, and this building is very simply laid out for that. I brought the plan of the old building with me if anyone wanted to look at it. But there is a nice space right in the entryway where there could be put some really decent large footings that would support and stabilize the portal frame. It has to be grounded. It can't just be setting there. It has to have the means, like in any foundation, to transfer all the loads down into the ground. So this portal frame can be there, and drag struts can go from that point through underneath the roof assemblies right at the tie of the walls and the ceiling. And it can also go through the floor systems on the lower floor at the tie between the floor and the walls. So it's something very easy to do, easily accomplished. And I'm not given the opportunity when I'd like to, and I requested the opportunity to meet with members of the board and show how it works. So there's that request, but I'm going to go further than that. And you heard me say when I started that I'm saying don't spend money. I'm here to request the board withdraw the statement that there's going to be a bond election. I don't feel it's the appropriate time. I don't think enough study has gone into it from the standpoint of people that have independent thinking. And I think it would give great credibility to the board in doing so. Right now, if you've been listening to Talk in the City, the Talk in the City is about that this whole thing's been put together to make this happen regardless what opinion is. I know personally how I've been kept from talking about it, but there are more and more people talking about it that I'm not even in touch with. So I think it would be an appropriate time to consider, should we go forward with it? You certainly are hearing some of it yourselves, and I would recommend that you stop and think about it. And I continue to request, and I've requested several times, to have an inspection of the building. I would like to go look at the attics, and I'd like to look at the attics as well in Eugene Field School. We've had conversations about, and you hear it in the public sector, about there's an air quality problem at Eugene Field School. We put a new PVC roof on. We made that same assembly and covered the front entryway, even on the walls, with this PVC, which is perfectly waterproof. It's like an upside-down swimming pool, and it prevents fumes from going out. But we don't put ventilation in it. We've got a wood building. All those fumes will gather. They can't get out as easily. There's improper foundation at Eugene Field School. I did look at that as well. We don't have vents in the corners. We don't have the square footage that we normally think would be tolerable. A lot of them are plugged with leaves. We have lack of maintenance on both the Slater campus and Eugene Field School. Downspouts disconnected, all kinds of things that are going to cause problems, and we're letting it go. And I'd be glad to give you a complete list of those things that I see there. So anyway, I'm available. I'm asking for inspection. I'm asking to have the board listen to me, and I'm asking that you consider withdrawing the bond request.
All right, thanks, Gene. Any questions for Gene? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene. One quick question. When could you have a list of what you see as deficiencies at Eugene Field in terms of maintenance and moisture issues, ventilation issues?
I could have it tomorrow, probably.
Oh, I don't think we
It's
need
in
it.
my head right now.
Okay. Could you provide that for us? Would you provide it for us?
Yes, I would.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
had a tour with the principal, and she showed me highlighted points, but you know, the interesting thing is you look at a spot on the ceiling, and the stain is probably several decades old, and different things. We talk about the knob and tube electrical. I'm sure that there's some knob and tube electrical there, but I'm also sure it's not connected, because when they went through and we remediated, when the electrical systems changed, that wouldn't have been left there. So typically, if we were going to change in a structure, we wouldn't tear that out. We wouldn't tear the walls apart to do it. We provided with the new wiring to code, which I'm sure was done. So we have a bunch of things that are little micro things in Eugene Field School, and then the report comes out like the whole building is pervaded with this problem. In the basement, we walked and we talked about that when we have rain, that the floor gets water on it. Well, I said, well, where's your sump pump? Well, I don't think we have any. And we walked past this little spot in the floor where there's a removable lid in the floor that, in my opinion, there's a sump pump there. We're not taking care of things like we should, and we're just ignoring them, and we're letting things get worse and worse instead of taking care of the assets that we have.
Well, if you could provide us a list, I think that would
I
be
will.
helpful. Okay,
All right.
thank you. Anybody else like to address the board this evening? Right, seeing none, we'll move on. Discussion items. First item is the Strong School, Strong State Resolution 31113. Andy or David, maybe you want to talk to that one? I think it's in our packet tonight. It's regarding the governor's initiative and provide funding for state school districts.
Yes, there's actually a strong coalition of education organizations in the state. Oregon School Administrators, School Boards Association, Oregon PTA, School Office Executives, quite a few of them. It's on the handout, and they are working in concert to in a public information campaign specific to what the group is identifying as 4 levels of funding that have been or will be considered for K-12 schools in the state of Oregon. And part of their campaign includes some statements specific to the level of funding as it pertains to all K-12 schools across the state of Oregon. And then this coalition has asked school districts to craft their independent language about, related to the levels of funding. And each of you board members have a copy for the public. There's a poster on the wall over here that was sent as part of this campaign, and it refers to the 4 levels: 6.15 billion, 6.55, 6.75 is 6.895 billion, and that refers to projected levels, or could be projected levels, of K-12 funding for the next biennium. As each one of you has seen, that clearly there are indicators described with each one of those levels, from the lowest at 6.15 billion being extremely concerning to all schools in Oregon, including Silver Falls School District, referred to as crisis budget, and to the level of 6.895, which says investment and improvement, and everything in between. And during my my administrative report regarding the budget, I can comment a little bit more on that, about what I think the legislature is doing. But that's the campaign, and this coalition has asked school districts to take action in support of this campaign. So, David, I'm not sure if you want to chime in, or any questions?
Well, I absolutely support this. I think that some people know, some people don't. In the last approximately 15 years, public education in Oregon has lost about 39% of its share. Actually, I take that back. Let me get this organized. Been a long day. We have gone from about 48% of the state budget down to 39% of the total budget pie, which is a huge loss for public education, and we haven't been able to climb back out of that hole. So Oregon School Boards Association, which I have worked with for many years, has launched this initiative and put together a coalition of education organizations, which is not an easy thing to do. I think it's the first time in my memory that we've actually gotten all of the major education organizations, from OEA to OSBA, and all of the other interested parties, including significant parts of the Oregon business community, in the same room, at the same table, and in support and agreement for this effort. And it's going to be a very visible, very high energy, very public effort to raise public awareness and to try and raise the level of funding for public education in Oregon. So I would highly recommend that the board support this. And I don't know what else I can say. I can try and answer questions, but.
Yeah, any questions? This is an action item later this evening. All right, good, thank you.
Thanks.
Right, next is the 2013-14 school calendars. We have a couple of options in front of us. Discussion. So the one option is the original calendar with the conferences in the fall aligned between the elementary and the high schools, and the other one has them offset with the elementary parent-teacher conferences later in the school year. I believe this is an action item this evening as well. Yes.
So I'm just curious, what are the staff preferences? Or do we have one?
Well, the only reference that I can recall, or that I've heard, is specific to the association presentation, and that is that the calendar that retains the parent conferences earlier in the year is the preferred calendar by the high school level teachers and employees, and the elementary teachers see the merit in moving the conferences to November. So there is a split preference on this. If I can chime in,
Yeah,
Wally,
please.
And board members, you received a memo on this from me. I believe that there is some merit to considering moving parent-teacher conferences to the week of Thanksgiving. I want to create an awareness about a couple of items. First of all, the most common question that we get at the district office, in addition to when does school begin and when does it get out and when is Christmas break, is why do we have 3 calendars? And we have an elementary calendar, we have a Mark Twain calendar, and we have a high school calendar. And that question has been asked for many years, and as a result of that, about 6 or 7 years ago, the board took action to, following some recommendations for administration, to bring those calendars closer and closer together. But since you have a high school that essentially operates on a transcript grade semester system and an elementary system that operates on a trimester system. And again, those are good instructional practices at those levels. It's very difficult to create one K-12 calendar for your entire district. It's possible, and it could occur. So I believe what the proposal is that you have is an attempt at coming up with a resolution to help best meet the instructional needs of kids. However, what it does, though, is it adds, I think, another element to that question. In addition to why do you have 3 calendars, I think you'll hear the question, why do you have high school conferences in October and why do you have elementary conferences in November? And why are there no elementary kids going to school during Thanksgiving week, but high school kids are going to school during Thanksgiving week? So even though my instinct says I think there's some merit to some components of this proposal, I believe that it's going to create some additional confusion. And I'm recommending that you approve option A, which is the traditional approach, and that we spend some time over the course of next year looking at what some of those I guess, drivers are that could help maybe even create aligning the calendars even closer than what we have right now. So that's my input and my recommendation to you, and obviously it's your call, but I do believe that there's some merit to giving the proposed calendar a little bit more time and looking at it next year.
Thanks, Andy. One of my concerns with the late conferences is during Thanksgiving week is I think we'll have several families skipping town and they won't attend conference, they won't attend school. And I've been assured that probably won't happen, but I think history has shown us otherwise. But
when Maria Traeger came and spoke with us in regards to it, I think she had some compelling arguments about, the standards and them changing for the lower grades. And I thought it was valid, and I would be more for option B at this point and to have it revisited next year, just because things have changed for the teachers and how they are monitoring the kids' progress. And the earlier conferences don't allow quite the same flexibility and knowledge that the later ones do for the younger grades.
thanks, Julie. Any other comments? All right, this is an action item later this evening. All right, move on to proposed revisions to policies. They're all second readings. EEA, EEAB, student transportation services. Any comments on that? Next is GCDA, GDDA, criminal record checks, fingerprinting. Any comments? Next is IL, assessment program. JECBB, intra-district transfer students. And JECF, inter-district transfer of resident students. Those are all second readings. Right, next is the JBJ. It's a first continuation of our first reading of weapons in schools. Got some more information from the staff on that. It was good reading. I think it showed we have kind of a split opinions in that area. I think it probably matches what the community sees as well as this board. So any further comments on that? I do have a proposal that with the budgeting coming up, we may want to just push this further discussion on this item off until after we get budgeting done, until we know. It's like some of the things you brought up, Julie, on can we afford some resource officers and where would they go, and we really don't know those details right now.
Another thing I think is maybe getting creative. We're reading about a school in Connecticut and having the officers actually be facilitated out, having their offices out of the high school. It was a less expensive way to go, and it was a benefit for both the community and the school. I think maybe looking into some creative ways, because I really think that relationship with the police officers is important, and having the protection of a police officer in the building is important, but I think that money is also something we can try to figure out. But I just thought that was a very interesting thing, that was a solution for another community, was actually having them facilitate out of the high school.
Do you have a news article or anything you can share?
I'll look for it again,
Okay.
because I did, I went to send it, and
That'd be
then I
interesting to
had
read.
to.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, and I was, thought, oh,
Yeah,
that's a
the first
creative
day-
community.
Well, we do something similar to like that in Monitor. Like there's a substation at there's a sheriff's office, they'll come in and do paperwork. at the police station, then something along those lines, is that kind of what you're,
Yeah, so that
Or they would,
they're
you
working out of the school, so
They
they
got-
have
they-
the presence.
they need to sit down somewhere and do paperwork. Can they do it in the corner of a building? That type of,
And that it didn't cost the community
yeah.
a lot of money to organize that.
Yeah, nice idea.
We need to, need to be more creative about it.
I
About
think,
finding ways to-
I agree with those comments. I think there are lots of potential options available to us. I've made it clear that the only thing I will support is a certified, trained law enforcement officer, someone who is proficient in dealing with the kinds of situations that the ordinary citizen who has a concealed weapons permit is not trained to deal with. So my personal feeling is that we should table any consideration of changes to this policy indefinitely at this point, and we should continue our conversation and our research about the options that are available to us. So,
Yeah, I would be against having concealed carries in, but I would like to, I wish we could arm some security guards, but the insurance has a different opinion about that. It seems to me like a trained security guard would be adequately trained to, so we're kind of giving this false choice right now.
Well, we got to remember
So,
there's a
yeah.
bigger issue out there as well. Even if we have 2 or 3 security guards that take care of our large schools, we still have a handful of small schools that
Yeah.
are really left hanging out there. We have,
Yes.
they have absolutely no protection, and police protection is many, many minutes away.
Well, how much was it to hire a security guard at, say, a rural building? You know, say one.
We need to understand that, I don't know.
We need to learn more. What would that cost? But the insurance, the willingness of of PACE to insure us, they didn't seem to like them before. So there's much to research on this.
PACE didn't like it before, and they don't like it now, so
I'm just trying to
at least the
figure out a way
proposed change.
Yeah.
that we're
So
considering.
what's the pleasure of the board then? I propose to push it out till the May, June timeframe, table it till then. David's suggesting indefinitely.
I think indefinitely in terms of gathering more information. I think we haven't really heard from experts in the field of school safety. We're all interested in school safety, but we need to talk to people who are really well-versed in the issues surrounding school violence and school protection and safety for our staff and students, rather than do something that just feels right to us, which may be actually creating more problems than it addresses.
So I guess I would propose we table this until the June session.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, next item is the May bond election. We heard some comments this evening. I believe there's a campaign out there to help drive home the issues and educate the voters on some of the issues we're seeing. Any comments, discussion on that? Andy, do you have anything to add on that? You don't have to.
You know, each one of you has received a copy of a frequently asked question sheet. It's also made available to the public this evening, and that's being updated as appropriate.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's new information there. The school district will be providing the community's neutral information through use of an insert in Our Town publication as a way to distribute additional information to the community specific to the pond.
All right. I think the information Mr. Pfeiffer is going to bring us to, see how it gels with some of the other information we have, will be interesting, might be helpful to us as well. Okay, we'll move on to administrator and staff reports. Andy, the 2013-14 budget.
Yeah, I made the reference to the state budget. I do want to cite a couple of items for your reference, just as we move through this process. The co-chairs, Buckley and Devlin, the Senate and House have submitted or are proposing a budget for K-12 education, which is in the around 6.75 billion range. So when you consider the reference that's made on the chart put together by the coalition on the wall, I think you'll see that does create some sustainability, at least over the course of 2 years, to be able to maintain the services within K-12 education. There are still some unknowns about what will be approved at the state level and signed by the governor specific to relief on related to PERS reform and what that looks like, and then in addition what will or will not be challenged subsequently in court. And so all of those are elements, not just as simple as just this is the amount of money that you're getting over the course of the next couple of years. So there's a little bit of cautious optimism, but I use that phrase hesitantly simply because we don't know. The legislature has, however, stated, including the co-chairs, have stated their interest in providing a reasonable level, or excuse me, a level of funding with some reasonable assurance by the middle of April, so that school districts can use a reliable figure as they move through the budget development process. Your first budget committee meeting is on April 8th, 11th? 8th, and there's somebody, I don't recall, 11th, thank you. And we're right in line with the majority of school districts in the state of Oregon. So that would fall in line with information that you need and the budget committee needs in order to make a recommendation to you for approval in June. So that's where we are. I'm still holding my breath.
Realistically, don't you expect any decision on PERS to be challenged? I certainly do.
Yes, I expect it to be challenged. I expect some to be, if there's a level of challenge, some to be challenged in a stronger fashion than others, depending upon which element it is. So you are receiving a budget, however. The principals have turned them all in, and directors have turned them into Jan, and that does complete the school year. It is proposed without furlough days. It is proposed and does essentially maintain all existing staff, so that's a good thing. It unfortunately, however, does not reflect any cost of living adjustments or insurance adjustments and a number of compensation items which will have to be discussed and determined at the bargaining table.
Sure.
So Andy, do we know, just an additional question, do we know, we have firmer figures about the impact of federal sequestration on our budget?
Yeah,
Silver Falls.
that was my second point. The
good.
figures are in percentage means, David. The 5%, it's what's been indicated to us, and for federal dollars we receive, and the largest areas are specific to IDEA funding. That's our special education funding from the federal level. So the equivalent of the sequestration reduction would equate to about a full-time equivalent assistant, classified employee. On the title side, excuse me, on the other federal, the revenue that funds the other program is specific to Title I programs. That's a remediation specific to math and reading in the district, and that would also be about a 5% reduction, and that has varying levels of effect across the district that we're not certain as of just yet, simply because there's a potential for us to carry over some existing Title I dollars as we move into next year, and that carryover is spread district-wide. But if it's fully implemented, it will distinctly result in the loss of staff. Very few would believe, but it will result in the loss.
So it sounds like
staff.
possibly up to 2?
I'd say from a title perspective, 2 is probably a reasonable assumption, but that just still hasn't been determined yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Classified positions.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Jan, the financial report.
I have nothing to add to what you received in the mail, but if you have any questions, or if you ever have any additional information that you would like me to provide, just let me know.
Questions for Jan?
Thanks.
Thank you. Right, and I'd like to invite Mark Recker to come on up and tell us what's going on at Prattam and Silvercrest and district assessment.
I didn't know I was doing district assessment. I mean, I know that's part of my job.
That's what it says here. It says right here.
All right, so Prattam. Just update on PLCs, just continue to work. I talked last time about how they're focusing on writing, and particularly how they're focusing on the teacher as writer first, and then seeing what they learn as a writer themselves professionally and personally, and then continuing the discussion and how that impacts students. And so it's been a really rewarding time for them to look at that aspect of writing. And it's paid off, we believe, in improved student writing too. Mrs. Freoff, as a result of those conversations with staff, began implementing something called writing into the classroom, and that spread to the other classrooms. And the kids really get into it. And it's nothing fancy. It's just a cool thing to do to start the day writing. And they're writing some good stuff.
Can you explain a little more what that is?
I can tell you that it's very open-ended, almost like journal writing.
Okay.
And, you know, what's on your mind, what happened over the weekend, that kind of stuff.
All right.
Yeah. But it can be a little more directed too. Just another example that comes to mind is there'll be 3 objects, or 3 or 4 or 5 objects on the desk in front of the room, and for students who don't have something to write about, and they can choose one of those as a prompt just to get them going. So just going from there to the recent district writing assignment, we just got those results back, and teachers, just the middle room and the big room, very pleased with the results. And, you know, whether it's a result of what the conversations are having, who knows what the real reason is, but it seems like it goes together. Also, over the weekend, our Battle of the Books team, 3rd through 5th grade Battle of the Books team competed in Woodburn and did really well. There were 2 Silver Falls teams that moved on to the quarterfinals, and Pradham was one of them. So that was Alicia Snook, Izzy Wade, Mia Thomason, and Alyssa Slippy. And they had an awesome score. They had to have had one of the top scores going into that round. But then just made it one round into the quarterfinals, and they were out. But had a good experience. And then also mark your calendars for April 20th. It's the pancake breakfast at Pradham. If you have never been, then just picture this in your mind, taste in your mind bacon, sausage, scrambled eggs, of course, and pancakes with a warm mixed berry sauce from Willamette Valley Fruit Company. Right? You want me to repeat the date for you? April 20th starts, I think they start at 7 in the morning, maybe even earlier than that. And they'll steal money for breakfast and for auction, not auction, but raffle items. But it all goes to a good cause. So if you can make it there, then we'd love to see you. You have a question about it?
Well, I was wondering if we could move that up.
Earlier in the day?
In the month.
Just for you? We would do just about anything for you. How about next year? Okay. Silvercrest. Talked to you last time, and I hope you remember I talked to you mostly about the new reading or language arts and math programs we've started up there. So I just want to update you on those. I did not solicit. I didn't go to teachers and say, hey, give me some good quotes for the school board meeting I have to present on Monday night. But I did kind of check things out, not right before I came, but last week, kind of got around to everybody and said, so how are things going? And so I just want to tell you some of the comments about RIGS. RIGS is that phonics-based approach to reading and writing and spelling. And so here's 3 of the things I heard teachers say. It's amazing how kids are doing in spelling this year. No comparison to years past. These are 1st and 2nd graders who are learning, who are figuring out how to spell words like publication. Instead of memorizing the spelling, they're sounding it out with the rules that they're learning. Also heard comments out of the writing assessment scoring. This is the best handwriting in the district. Handwriting is a big part of the RIGS program. And another teacher said this is the best group of writers as a whole I've ever seen. And so all those things they are attributing to the RIGS program that they're doing. Now, RIGS is not our official adoption in the district. It's so we teach it less. We have to teach it less than 50% of the time, and we chose to do it to boost up our convention scores, and we're seeing that it's doing the job. So very pleased with it. Teachers are very excited about it. Kids are very excited about it. All right, so let's turn on math. We did get permission from the district to adopt a new math curriculum K through 5, and so we adopted a program called Math in Focus. It's an iteration of Singapore Math. There's a few publishers that put out things called Singapore Math, and Singapore Math was the inspiration for the new Common Core standards. So it's basically the same standards as the new standards everybody's going to have to meet. But there's some philosophical approaches to teaching in Singapore Math that are a little bit different. And I talked to you about those last time. So I'm not going to go over all of it again, but I'm going to tell you the teacher comments about what we've been doing. Great materials. Can't believe what my kids are able to do. My students consider themselves mathematicians. My kids love math. And then I'm going to throw in a negative thing just so you know I'm being fair. It's a real challenge to teach 2 grades at once. And that one I think is attributed to just a different approach. As I said last time, it moves from the concrete to the abstract. That everything starts with models, real life examples, and then abstracting it and building the algorithms. So when you're doing all that groundwork to get the conceptual understanding, it is hard. It takes more time. It results in better mathematicians and kids that love math. But when you've got 2 grade levels you're trying to do in the same class, I think it's more of a challenge. So that one we're still working out. In December, the author of our program came and worked with the Silvercrest teachers, and that's a pretty unique opportunity to get the author of the textbook in your building. He had some great ideas for us. He taught a couple sample lessons, one to the kindergartners. He popped into the 3rd grade classroom, and they were so excited to see him because he was the author, and so they had him sign their textbooks. So they don't often get the author's signature on textbooks, but it was pretty cool. And he gave us some ideas about how we could adjust the program. The big challenge of switching to the new content standards is they're more rigorous than the old ones. And how do we get kids on this track to all of a sudden meet new standards? And so he helped us come up with a system of which books and which chapters to do when, so that by 2014-15 we should be on track. And it feels really good to be a little bit ahead of the rest of the district in terms of implementing the new content standards. So we hope the rest of the district can learn from what we've done, but it's going to be a challenge to all of a sudden switch gears and be working towards the new standards for everybody. It was whenever you adopt a new program, you kind of, you do your research, you get excited about it, but you still cross your fingers and hope this works. And we're feeling really good about it, that we're feeling like we can uncross our fingers and keep doing something that's been working so far, and that feels really good. If you want to see it in action, you're of course welcome to come visit any day. But March 19th, here's another date like you can put on your calendar. No warm mixed berry sauce for your pancakes, but we will feed you a chicken enchilada dinner. So March 19th at 5:30 for dinner. We're having a back to school night where the kids are actually going to be doing presentations in the classroom, either of the rigs that they've been learning or the Singapore Math that they've been learning. And we're excited to show off to parents what they've been learning, and excited for anybody else to come up and see what's been going on. All right. The honor assembly is coming up this Thursday at 10:30, and that's a pretty regular thing. I wouldn't normally tell you about it, but we started this year a community service project for students. It's not required, but we might as well have required it because well over half of the students are participating in this optional community service, where anybody in the school who has a job to do, sorting papers, cleaning desks, scraping gum off of the tables, even though they're not supposed to have gum, anybody can get credit for the hours that they put in. And there are some students that have amassed nearly 100 hours of community service. helping in the kindergarten classroom, helping in the second grade classroom. They do it during their recesses, they do it during, if there's a study time at the end of the day, they come in and do it during that time. It's been an awesome thing, and that's one thing we'll recognize at our honor assembly on Thursday. And then Spirit Week is March 18th through 22nd, and that's about it.
All right, thanks, Mark. Any questions for Mark?
I just have one question. I'm curious about the Schools Climate Project, initiative, whatever we want to call it. What's up with that?
The schools?
Schools Climate. We used to talk about that a lot. The business of instilling citizenship and positive behavior, and it was an initiative a couple years ago. Well, more than a couple. I've been here more than a couple, but a while back, and I haven't heard about it for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, where did it go? It seems like a very important topic given our concern about school safety, because I think that schools climate is a very large component of, or a very large consideration in school safety. So.
Absolutely. So it didn't go, but we did put some things in place that we thought would put us in a good position school climate-wise. And so there's probably, while it's always on our mind, there's probably less big initiatives we need to take to address it. But we take every opportunity we can to make students feel proud of their efforts, to recognize them for what they've done, to make them feel proud of their school and be a part of their school. This community service is an excellent example of that. You know, they have ownership in their school. Even things like tree tagging, which I've talked about many times, the Christmas tree run, when you have 600 people from other schools show up at your school, it makes you feel special. You know, even though they didn't come to see you, they came to your school. And doing stuff like that, I think, goes a long ways towards school climate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's
You
just
did.
lots of, I apologize for that. I'm going to put everybody else on the spot too.
Okay.
It's part of, I think, my role to bring that issue up in my position as an elected board member. But sometimes we start initiatives and when they have a great deal of energy for a while, and then we get very busy with other things because we have a multitude of other things to think about. But I think that that's one I would like to try to put some more energy into, and
Absolutely.
you know, I think it's very important. So, you know, okay. So
Good.
thanks very much.
Anything else from Mark? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, I'd like to invite Mark Hannon and Kirsten Barnes. Come on up.
Good evening. I'm excited tonight, as I'm sure you will be, that my board presentation will consist of Ms. Kirsten Barnes and her some of her college history students outlining their recent trip to Washington, D.C. and the experiencing the presidential inauguration. And I will turn it over to Kirsten and her students to let you know how that experience went for them. Thanks.
So thank you very much for letting us come tonight to speak about the inauguration and just our experience there. I'm here with 5 students from last year's college history class. And our journey on going to the inauguration started off in October 2011, 15 months before the presidential inauguration ever happened. And we were studying some old documents, is what the students would say, old step barns. But we were studying George Washington's farewell address and Madison's Federalist Paper number 10.
Good stuff.
And in both pieces, they asked the country to focus on what's ahead of us and not get caught up in factions and party lines in those different pieces. And so we asked the question, would you go to the presidential inauguration if you didn't know who was going to win and you didn't know if you were going to vote for the winner, and would you pay money to go and do that? And it was supposed to kind of be a question that was open-ended and talk about it, and it didn't end up being like that. The students were interested in it, they got excited,
they said, yeah, Barnes, let's do it, you know, and I was like, I don't even know how to do this. So we wrote to Senator Wyden. We actually did some research, found out that Senator Wyden wasn't running for re-election in 2016. So we had the best chance of talking with him because it wasn't as political year. We didn't have as many people coming to him for different things. Started working through that idea and put together a plan, and we were told there's no guarantees that you'll get tickets to the inauguration, but if you want to come, the infield's open. You know, come and be a part. And so we decided, 34 students in the class, and started working 15 months ahead, and in the end, we had 22 students confirmed and paid to go, and the trip cost $1,100. Chinook Community College paid for my substitute because the students are all college credit now students, and so they paid for my son to be able to go on this trip and be a part of it. And we were gone for 8 days, 7 nights, and just had a fantastic trip. And so we're here tonight to kind of tell you a little bit about that. And this is Coben. He went on a trip with us, and one of the things he did was he really embraced it and started off and did a senior project attached to it before he went also.
So as she said, my name is Coben, and when we knew that we were going to plan to go, whether we would be at the inauguration itself or not, I became really excited, and as soon as we knew that we could go for sure, I spent a few weeks researching it, researching the Washington, D.C. itself and what we would be able to do there for the 8 days, because we really wanted to be there for more than just the inauguration. I put together a pamphlet for the parents of all the students that would be going so they could see what we were doing, which included the information for anything we would do in the hotel we would be staying at, and we came up with potential prices for foods and airplane tickets. And I even put together a video outlining all the inaugurations before then, so parents would know what we would be witnessing. And also, as Barnes said, I chose to do my senior project around it. I wanted to do something that would encourage peers that wouldn't be going to get involved, so I chose a partner, Savannah, actually, and we registered our peers to vote during fall of last year before the election.
Okay, my name is Katie, and I went on the trip, and I will be talking along with my friend Nicole about some of the things we saw. So on our first actual, full day in Washington, D.C., we drove out to the Pentagon. We rode the Metro, actually. Out to the Pentagon, and then we went out to Mount Vernon in Virginia. And because Miss Barnes has great contacts, we were allowed, behind-the-scenes tours, so we got to see some really cool stuff.
A couple days later, we went to the Holocaust Museum, and that was pretty emotional to go through, but we actually spent 4 hours going through all 3 levels of the museum and stuff, and then afterwards we went to a lot of monuments and stuff. And then on the actual inauguration day, we had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to stand in line. We just stood in line for about an hour or so. And then we went through security and everything, and we stood in line. And in the beginning, there was only our group that was standing there, and you could tell people were coming in. But then by an hour later, it was packed, and we got shoved forward, and you had to stand your ground. We wanted to get trampled over. And we actually had group stretching too. There was this one guy in the crowd that made us all lean to the left and lean to the right so we wouldn't tense up and it was really cold outside, so we stayed warm doing that. And then the next morning when we went and met with the senators, his secretary, one of the office people, actually took us where President Obama was standing during the inauguration, and we got to take pictures and everything while we were there. And a lot of people don't get to do that, and it's because we met with the senators that we got to go behind the scenes.
Yeah, that was my favorite part. A lot of us had been to DC before with the marketing trips and things, but all the perks and the behind the scene extra things we got by planning ahead and talking to our senators and Ms. Barnes is what made the trip wonderful too.
So I'm Miranda Leadham, and me and Savannah are going to be talking about what we learned actually after going and everything. So Mrs. Barnes said, we went to see how we could honor our presidents, and we could also witness some people who didn't exactly honor our president's point of view. You don't know if you guys have heard about it, but you can also YouTube it. Tree Guy. He's pretty popular. He spoke out against like what Obama and everything believes in, how he believes, which is totally okay because that's what you expect to happen. Also going to DC, like you got to see like politics at work. Like we actually got to go to Wyden and Berkeley, this thing where a bunch of residents from Oregon actually asked him questions about like things that we're concerned about as Oregonians, and it was really cool to like see him like and them like both like really concerned about what we think and like what we believe and what we're seeing day to day. It was really cool. And also like just learning the background of our nation, I thought that was really awesome because it's more different than reading it in a textbook than actually like being there and seeing it happen.
Yeah, it was really, really cool just seeing everything and knowing that you're a part of it. It really sparked my interest in politics, and I know that now I want to be involved. I want to be involved in the process and how it's all happening. And I'm actually applying for an internship at Senator White's office this summer. So hopefully I can get my foot in the door with how the system works. And I had an incredible opportunity at Silverton taking a college history class, getting credits that in high school from Shemekinah, helped me get my foot in the door. And I actually have earned 45 credits from Shemekinah, which is going to allow me to go to OSU as a sophomore, which is just an incredible opportunity that I've been given at Silverton High School.
So when we kind of looked through it, one of the big pieces in Mr. Obama's speech in the State of the Union right after we returned home was he said, what would happen if all high school students could graduate with an associate's degree? And so a lot of people were kind of laughing, and I kind of thought about it for a second, and I thought, well, actually, there's opportunities for our students really to be very close to earning an associate's degree. And so Savannah has 45 credits. Miranda, how many figure out you had?
I'll have around 40 for graduating.
Yeah.
Bitsy
has like 90 or
Bitsy has 75.
Wow.
So, and so she'll actually be close to transferring as a junior. She just needs a certain credits to be taking. So what I would encourage, and we kind of said, well, what can we bring back home to encourage peers and leaders of our community? And we would just encourage people to take these accelerated classes, take the AP classes, take the College Credit Now classes. Don't discount College Credit Now for not being an AP class. It is an accelerated class that students earn credit, just like they're sitting at Oregon State University or the University of Oregon. The students are studying the same materials. The teachers have degrees that have them as instructors at those universities. And so we're able to really be a part of the system and have students earn credit. So students in college history earn 12 credits for taking the class, in which they receive credit for History 201, 202, and 203, as an example. It's just a great opportunity for them to have and earn credit. And all for the grand price of $25 a year. Shemekinah's partnership with Silverton High School is $25 a year for as many college credits as you can take. So our encouragement to the school board, is that we look for more opportunities to offer college credit classes, that we can look for opportunities for students to gain access. And so part of that might be offering incentives for teachers to get qualified to be able to be teachers in these programs. It requires 24 graduate level courses in that topic. And so sometimes it's a little tricky, but actually transcripts become important in hiring at that point. And so we would just encourage people to look at some of those different incentives for what's going on. So those are the big pieces. And I think we did a really good job on Dr. Honoring the President. I know the first time we were really squished by the end. I mean, you couldn't put your hands up in the air. You were so tight. It was like this. And the students, someone walked onto the scene and the people around us started booing. And everyone was like, hey, that's not good. And it was just the scene that we're here to honor the President of the United States. It didn't matter who you voted for or who you didn't vote for. This was about being an American citizen. And it was just a great opportunity, and we really enjoyed our chance to represent Silverton, to be able to speak to different people and have a chance to do that. So, any questions?
Thank you for doing this and making a difference in these kids' lives. It took a lot of extra effort on your part, so appreciate that.
Amazing, really amazing.
I said, but for professional development for me, it's probably one of the best things I've ever been able to do, because we worked for 16 months ahead of time on just working and being teaching and doing things, and then we got there and it was real, and the students were like, Barnes, did you see that over there? And I said, I saw it over there. And so it was, one of those great moments of being educated.
All right, well, good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mark, anything else?
I just did want to address Mr. Beeson's point about school climate, and that's one of the things that we take really seriously at Silverton High School. In fact, all the way back into the design of the school, and when you walk into the building and you see the kiosk there, that was very thoughtful in not only from a safety standpoint, but from a customer service standpoint, and just providing a home base for information for people coming into the building. Our advisory groups, that right there is the number one reason that we continue to take valuable time every day to connect students with a staff member in small groups all 4 years, and make them part of the community. You heard tonight the senior project that our students are required to do to graduate, and that's a small thing that connects them to the community to pay it forward, if you will, and we're very thoughtful in making those student connections and trying to get students to love the school that they go to, and so that's very important. And those are just a few things. We have a number of things in terms of clubs and activities and athletics, and our ASB leadership program is instrumental in creating an overall school climate that's safe and welcoming to our students. So I just wanted to address that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. The word is out. He's going to ask that question in every report. Right?
Thanks, Mark. All right, board reports. Do we have any board reports this evening? All right, move on to correspondence. We've received a number of emails regarding the bond. Andy's been passing them along. I'm not aware of anything else.
Nothing since you last.
Okay. All right, to open it up for a second audience with visitors, would anybody else like to discuss to the board tonight?
I'm Lisa Leslie. Good to see you all tonight. And chose to speak now instead of at the beginning, just to hear what you had to say about the policy change referencing the guns with staff members. And I'm disappointed that you didn't go with David Beeson's recommendation to table it entirely. But since you didn't, and I am not sure I'll be able to be at the other meetings, I'll go ahead and speak now and hand you a copy of this when I'm done, then, if that's right. I'm glad you proposed this policy change because I was unaware of the current status around guns on our school properties. Like many people I've spoken with, I was mistaken in my assumption that guns were not allowed on school property. Because of the policy you've proposed, I've taken the time to research the laws about guns in Oregon. It has been quite an eye-opener for me, as I'm not a gun owner and I don't have a lot of experience with guns. As it stands now, there are likely folks with handguns at every football game, basketball game, theater performance, parent-teacher conference day, and even lunch break when parents sometimes visit their children at school. In fact, it's likely someone here in this meeting has a concealed gun. This is pretty shocking to me, as I thought our schools were weapon-free zones. And I'll say that many people I've spoken with were also surprised at that. Currently, state law does not allow the school board to restrict people who have concealed handgun licenses from carrying their guns on school property unless they are employees. But a Senate resolution is being considered that would allow you to do so if it were to pass. And that's really the big point I want to make. So I'll run through the rest of this pretty quickly here. But I can understand an impulse to do something because it feels right. I get that. I totally get that. And I'm going to assume that that's why this came up, that because of the tragedies that have happened recently, to somebody on this board, it felt right to say, let's have our staff members have a gun available so they could help out in a desperate situation. And I can get that. The problem is we can't act based on our feelings in matters like this. As an educator employed by you, you expect me to make my decisions based on evidence-based best practice. So in other words, I have to use science. I don't get to just do whatever I want in the classroom because it feels good and it seems right to me. I can't do that. And I'm going to ask you to do the same. What evidence exists that would support a change like this to our policy? I can't find anything other than opinion and conjecture to support the notion that the presence of guns in any random violent situation changes the situation for the better. Certainly, there's no specific data or even anecdotal information that shows that staff with handguns on school property makes the school safer. You might have an isolated story or two. Those exist. I'll concede that. But there is no evidence from research that shows that this would make a positive difference on the school. There is ample evidence that when children have access to guns, there's a significantly increased risk of harm. And my buddy Elijah pointed out I should never say ample evidence, so thank you, Elijah. You know, not putting in my citations here on this one, but I think that anybody who Googles that topic will find a tremendous amount of information about the danger of children and guns. By allowing even more guns on campuses, the evidence points to a near certainty that some child will obtain access to a weapon and will cause harm. Children and guns don't mix well. I'm assuming you would require teachers and instructional assistants and volunteers to lock their weapons while on campus, but the increased opportunity for either error in this procedure or clever students finding a way to defeat such measures would make our schools more unsafe. There are slightly more than 136,000 public and private K-12 schools in America. Over the past 12 years, there's been a total of 46 times that a gun was fired on any of these properties. That works out to about 4 times per year on average that a gun is fired criminally on a school campus. These are incidents where a gun was shot, in some cases causing harm and in others not. Sadly, in several of these cases, the shooter was committing suicide and never threatened anybody else on the campus. Nevertheless, even if you include those cases, these statistics mean that the odds of a shooting happening at an individual school are about 1 in 35,000, and the odds of that shooting resulting in harm to any individual other than the shooter are about 1 in 50,000. I believe that even this really remote possibility warrants careful consideration of the safety of our students, but the odds of a student getting access to a gun on campus and causing harm if we allow guns to be habitually brought to school by adults is much more of a concern to me, and I hope it is to you too. There are very few places where guns are not allowed. Our laws restrict guns from public buildings unless a person has a concealed handgun license. It's just kind of a weird situation. The law also allows the entities who control such buildings, that would be you, to restrict even concealed handguns if they choose to, unless we're talking about schools. So that's the shocking part of the law right now, is that public buildings, the people who control those buildings, in every case other than schools, can say, for good cause, no concealed handguns allowed here. You can't do that. I just think that's weird. Senate Bill 347 would change this and would allow you to restrict guns even with a concealed handgun license from school property. I'm hoping that you will decide to make our schools truly gun-free zones if allowed to do so by our legislature. So the only good thing I think about tabling it until June is that by then you'll know if that passed or not, and you'll have an idea about that particular legislation. There are some places where one can't carry a handgun under any circumstances. These locations where the population makes the presence of guns unsafe for all parties. Courts, jails, mental hospitals are some examples. Unfortunately, our schools are quite well populated with students who are under psychiatric care, who have criminal records, or who exhibit behaviors that will likely place them in these categories at some point in their young adulthood. We can't exclude these students from school in any case, and we don't want them mixing with guns, so the only logical solution is to keep the guns out of the school buildings. Again, let me thank you for making me aware of the current situation and for the opportunity to speak. To be clear, my hope is that you would take every evidence-based and realistic measure to make our schools safe places. I appreciate your efforts to do that, and when you walk to, like Robert Frost, for example, right now, you can see the efforts that are being made. Doors are locked that didn't used to be. Procedures are in place to control access. Those things didn't cost a penny, and they haven't put anybody out. And if they have, oh well, that's the kind of thing we need to be doing. At the same time, we know that a truly deranged person who wishes to do harm may unfortunately find a way to do so. I hope that rather than changing our policy to allow the presence of more guns at schools in Silverton, you would carefully watch the progress of Senate Bill 347, and in the case of its passage, you would instead choose to restrict any person from bringing a gun on campus. Funny side notes, I went online today, and I've never shot a gun since I put that polywog on the end of the air pistol when I was about 10 and put it up in the air. So I'm not a gun person, okay? But I went online and I was looking at what it takes to get a concealed handgun license. And the first hit, I just clicked on the first hit I got, which was one of the commercial sites. It allowed me to take a course online. I was supposed to watch a 1-hour video, which I didn't do. I just went and took the test. I passed the test, and I was offered a certificate for $70 that I could then walk into the sheriff's office with and pay my additional $50 and $15 fingerprinting charge, and I could get a concealed handgun license. That's how much training I had to have. Don't pretend that there is any training necessary to get this license. There's none, zero. I did it in 5 minutes, and I don't know anything about guns, but you'd have to be a real not very intelligent person not to pass this test.
There's much better courses out there, though.
Oh, I'm sure there are. No, I'm sure there are.
Classes.
I'm not saying that there aren't wonderful
Yeah.
classes for teaching people the appropriate use of guns, and I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that I've read some really interesting things about guns and kids and people being together and doing family activities around that, and that's fine. That's all great. I'm just talking about how easy it would be for me to get one if I wanted to. And in addition to that, my son's been practicing picking locks lately, so I'll just throw that one out there, just for fun. And he went online and found the videos for how to do that. So I'm assuming that if you institute some kind of a policy that says that staff can bring guns, I asked him what he thought of that. He's 13, and he's a typical 13-year-old boy in some ways and not real typical in others. And his response was, well, that's not a very good idea. And I mean, all the kids are saying that's not a very good idea. But I said, why? And he said, well, where would they put it? And I said, well, where would the female teachers put it? And he said, probably in their purse. That's interesting. Where would their purse go? You know, I mean, he had to think hard to get to the fact they'd be locked up. And then he said, well, I know so-and-so, and he knew a teacher's name, has a handgun. He knows this because the teachers talked about it. And if he brought it to school, I bet he'd probably lock it in his desk. It took him that long to figure that out. Be afraid of that. Please be afraid of that.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks very much.
Would anybody else like to address the board? Yes.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Sheketoff. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. I'm going to say 3 cheers to what Lisa said. I first wanted, before talking about the gun thing, wanted to say on the calendar issue, I don't mind different calendars. What frustrated me this last week was learning that because of the calendar and the furlough days, Mark Twain lost the parent-teacher conference. And I was really surprised to get that in a letter and then a robocall call about it. And I think having the separate calendars is an issue. Making sure everybody has equal opportunity is more important than the calendars, have separate calendars. As far as the guns go, I would just say I think I was shocked to learn that guns are allowed by everybody but teachers and volunteers and contractors. And I am hoping that the legislation under consideration in the legislature is enacted so that you have the authority to outlaw all of them at the campuses. I've been concerned because I always knew it was easy to get them. I know you can get them online in Utah, I think it is, and bring them into places. I've talked with colleagues around the country about different states are very different. You know, Oregon, you don't have to go through a metal detector to get in the state capitol. In some state capitals you do. In Texas, it was in the paper this weekend. There's a separate line if you have a concealed weapon permit because you can walk right in. And so everybody can see who has it because they go through a separate thing. I think a few years ago they actually didn't allow handguns but allowed rifles or something. I just don't think, I agree with what Lisa said about all the problems of people having access to them and what would you do with them. And I'm really concerned about the lack of training. I think having a gun, even if you're a hunter and an avid sportsman for years, is very different from being a police officer and knowing how to deal with the stressful situation of a shooter. I'd urge all of you to look at an ABC study, a report ABC did on 2020 or something a few years ago, where they really looked at that issue of what if you train someone to use a gun, is that enough if you sort of up the training? And this police officer, basically the lesson is no, police officers receive more than just basic or better than basic training. And if you go to tinyurl.com/ all lowercase ABC guns, you can watch this little 5 or 10 minute story about what happened when they did this at a college campus and the results of that. And so that's really important to me. And then just this evening, a classmate of my son's was over for dinner. His father's a state trooper. And he was saying, you know, my dad watches TV shows and sees police officers don't hit the people when they shoot most of the time. Even they can't handle the stress And he's always, when they watch TV shows where there's cops shooting people, and his father always says, "Oh, that can't happen. That never happens." And I think the police officer community knows. So if there's any silver lining in not making it indefinite tabling, I'm confident that with research that you will ultimately table it, because I think you'll see that I can't imagine the public safety community suggesting that safety be turned over to our teachers and volunteers and contractors in the schools. So, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
Anybody else? All right, move on to action items. First item is the approval of the 2013-14 school year calendar. We have two options. Do we have a motion?
Well, I'll move for approval of option A. I think that Andy made a couple of good points when he talked about keeping this issue under discussion for a while. And one of the things that we haven't done is gather really the kind of public input that I think that we need when we consider a policy change of this nature. So.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Denise, did you get the nay? All right. All right, next item is the approval of the Strong School, Strong State Resolution Number 311, 2013. Is there a motion for that?
Mr. Chair, I'll move for approval.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, this time we will adjourn regular session and take a short recess and move into executive session under ORS.192.660, exempt public records. Thanks for coming.